Welcome to News You Can Use, presented by Supreme Lending. News You Can Use offers timely information related to the housing and housing finance industry that we believe will benefit you and your customers. This is News You Can Use.
As we begin 2021, the overall economy is continuing, like we all are, to try to find its way back to normal. Hopefully, the fiscal stimulus will continue to take place to support our neighbors in need until we get everyone vaccinated, and we hope and pray that that happens as soon as possible so we can all go back to business as usual. Not only the business part of the economy, but also just our entire lives. While the overall economy has struggled since the pandemic began in March of 2020, housing has been, thank God, and continues to be one of the good news stories in the economy. 30-year fixed-rate mortgages, on average, about 6% over the last 30 years. Well, they started last year, 2020, at 3.5%, an all-time low. And then when the pandemic took place, the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates and they went even lower. All of you are familiar with that. Some cases below 3%, depending on credit profiles, etc. The historical low rates are certainly a big reason that housing sales are up. The other good news is that these rates are helping millions of homeowners, and I mean millions, to refinance, dropping their payments, which is really acting as another stimulus. So that's all the good news, right? To offer some perspective about what happened last year in total, in 2019, not last year, the year before, our industry did 2.4 trillion in mortgages, 1.3 trillion in the purchase sector and 1.1 trillion in refinances. In 2020, a year later, last year, it went to 4.4 trillion, a 75% increase in demand for our services, purchase and refinance. 1.3 trillion, about the same as the previous year, a little bit higher, to 1.6 trillion in purchases and 1.1 trillion in refinances to 2.8 trillion in 2020. Again, a record-setting year total, specifically in the refinance business. Again, all these things are good news unless you need to get a mortgage loan done quickly or an appraisal done quickly, or unless you need to book a time on the calendar of an attorney or a title company to close a mortgage because of the traffic jam that's taken place. So the good news is causing a major traffic jam for service providers in the mortgage industry, the appraisal industry, and in the real estate industry and title company industry. Why? Because all these industries are dependent, ours and the rest of them, on labor. And you cannot just add staff, add water and stir, and you have a new mortgage banker or a new appraiser or a new attorney. It takes time to hire, to train and develop staff. 6 months, a year, 2 years, depending upon the role they play. So we have a traffic jam. It's the result of good news. And to offer perspective about the traffic jam, average mortgage loans in America took 58 days to close in the month of December, except at Supreme. Our average was 23 days, and 20% of our mortgages closed in 15 days or less. Why is that? Because we're committed to you as our partners and committed to delivering to you as our partners the industry's best customer experience. We want you to continue to be able to write contracts and get closed quickly because you'll need to with the supply issues in the market. Industry last year, refinancing, 64%. Ours was only 24%. Again, another indication that we're focused, laser focused on our partnership with you so we can continue to provide the industry's best customer experience. Hashtag start with Supreme. All right, there's a traffic jam in lending and in the appraisal business. Today, I have the opportunity to talk about the appraisal traffic jam and offer you news you can use to avoid the traffic jam or avoid it the best way you can. And I have the CEO of D.S. Murphy and Associates, Scott Murphy, largest appraisal firm in the Southeast, with us. Scott, welcome back to News You Can Use.
Matt, great to be here with you.
Yep, so I know you're working today because we're all working today because we work every day. It's Saturday, by the way. What are historically, go back prior to last year, what are historically the time frames that it takes to get an appraisal, kind of in a normal year?
Sure. Historically, the turnaround times have been about 5 days. That's year in and year out. Recently, we've been in the 8 to 10 day range, and currently we're moved to something closer to 10 to 14 days. And this rise is not just due to volume. It's still 200% of normal, but it's due to a lack of sales and the unprecedented rise in values in general. So we're having to spend a lot more time to complete each appraisal due to lack of data and making it so much more difficult. Previously, we might have had 10 to 15 sales in a neighborhood. Now we're lucky to get 4 or 5. And this is part of the reason why there are so many appraisals coming in low, is because appraisers aren't used to or willing or able to take the amount of time to do it right, to go out and find the right sales and to really focus in. They're also not good at coming up with the proper appreciation, making those adjustments, and really taking in consideration time.
Yeah, so we have really 2 problems, right? We have a traffic jam because of demand being at an all-time high, and then because of the complexity of a shallow inventory market, to your point, trying to get the values of these increasing prices just takes a lot more time for an appraiser actually get their work done. So we went from 5 days, what you're telling us, on average, historically, we're up to now a couple of weeks. And I can tell you in some cases, not using your firm, it's longer than that. And at the same time, we've got realtors who, to make their customers' profile, the contract profile to look best, are writing contracts with the tightest timeframes ever on financial contingencies, including appraisals. So we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. Okay, so we have good news, but the good news, right, is that we got a traffic jam. How long does it take you guys to train a new appraiser?
Appraising really takes about 3 to 4 years to get somebody to be completely competent on their own. We can get a good appraiser up and running in 6 to 8 months with one-to-one training with a supervised appraiser. But like you said earlier, you just can't add water and get somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, so it takes a long time to get new folks. And so the simple answer, a lot of real estate folks are probably thinking is, well, just hire more people. There's plenty of people looking for jobs, but it's not like we could just take them and turn them into experts at doing the work. So that they can do it quality-wise, the way it needs to be done. So we sell the loans in the marketplace, et cetera. Anyway, it's a challenging problem. And Scott and I were just talking before we got started here about the demand and about the challenge, about our folks having been working overtime, which no one's complaining, but it is taxing. So be nice to the appraisers, please, because they need you to be nice to them, especially if you want to get the values that you'd like, right? All right, let's talk about what we can do, Scott, to help our realtor partners so that they can avoid the traffic jam or try to avoid the traffic jam best things possible. First thing we've done at Supreme, just so all of you know, prior to the conversation I have with Scott now about what you all can do, we order our appraisals now on purchase transactions, your business, without the customer paying us. We take the risk that they will pay us. I mean, they'll come and do business with us. But we do that because that saves 1 or 2 days, sometimes 3 days, with the customer not having to pay us and us ordering it with D.S. Murphy or any other appraisal firm. We also offer, when it's necessary, additional financial incentive, and we absorb the cost. So we've done everything we can do, and that's why you should start with Supreme, right? But what, Scott, can a listing agent do when the phone rings, when they've got a contract and the phone rings, to help accelerate the appraisal process? What should they do?
Work as hard as you can to get the best possible data to help the appraiser out. There'll be more than enough appraisers out there that'll tell you, I can't take your data, which is ludicrous. But the majority of the appraisers welcome your input. They're running 90-0 all around your area. They may not have been in your subdivision recently. So give them all that good information. Write down notes on every comparable about things that you think that they should be aware of. Also, don't try to confine the appraiser to a specific meeting time. Most of my appraisals will set a 2-hour window, a little better than Xfinity or Comcast. But, we need that flexibility because right before we go out, we might get another job in the neighborhood and we need to squeeze it in so we can keep ourselves efficient. Think about the logistics that goes into doing what we have to do. We've got to travel all around this territory in addition to getting all this work done. So real important to try to let them work on their schedule. Most appraisers should have their own lockbox keys. And, that's really the best thing you can do is just try to keep the property available for them.
So two things. One, make sure that you're doing everything possible if you're a listing realtor to accommodate the schedule of the appraiser right now, because the way you order them, and I know appraisers try to stay in certain areas geographically to do the work. And if they miss the appointment, that is the realtor, for whatever reason, doesn't make themselves available, then they may have to wait another couple of days to get back on the calendar with the appraiser until they go back into that area. So that's first, right? And then the second thing is make sure that they're doing additional work to give additional data to support and justify the sales price, because that is a struggle today that we face that I haven't seen. I know you haven't either. In the previous 25 years that you and I have done business, up until a couple of years ago, the idea of an appraisal coming in short, it was a rarity if ever happened, right? And now with escalating prices almost 10% a year in the last couple of years, it certainly is. And we expect that to continue, by the way. So what shouldn't realtors do? So what they should do, and what shouldn't they do if they want to avoid a traffic jam?
Well, one thing Fannie Mae is doing right now is they're allowing two COVID-related alternatives for appraisals. And thank God Supreme is not acting on these. Many lenders are to try to, shortcut the supply of appraisers, but they're allowing appraisers to do a desktop or a drive-by appraisal. And you can see where this is going. Those appraisals are just not they're not worth the paper they're written on. We won't even do them. So if we can't get in the property, we won't do it unless it's an extremely unique situation with a health issue or something. And we're happy to work with that. But we want to come out and do a full appraisal. So make sure that you do everything you can to try to inspire the appraiser to do that. Don't force him into a position where he's going to take that alternative.
Yeah, some lenders try to market that tweak, if you will. But if you think about the liability that we would be creating back to the transaction, not only as a lender, as an appraiser, but really as a realtor, when lenders are selling that, they're making the idea that your buyer doesn't get a quality appraisal a reality. And if that happens down the road, you do not want them coming back to you and saying, hey, I have a problem, and you were one of the people that were persuading me. And that's why we're not doing those things. So let's talk about other news related to appraisal. We got low rates, historically low supply. 2.3 months of houses is the last report that came out. Average is about 6 months over time. And of course, this is driving prices higher. It's good for sellers, not so good for appraisers, as we've talked about already, and lenders. How do appraisers determine value, Scott? Give us the snapshot so that we remind our realtor partners here today, how do they actually determine value?
Well, this is something that many of the appraisers out there should listen to too, because actually, Pat, as you probably know, appraisers don't determine market value. Buyers and sellers do. So we take that purchase price, we put that contract on a pedestal. We don't attempt to disprove it, but on the other hand, if any of my appraisers are coming in low, I need them to show me why it's not worth the purchase price. So appraisals are based on precedent. So we need to find similar homes to the subject property and then just make minor adjustments to come up with our values. So it's very important that appraisers use true comparables and not just sales.
Yeah, I think one of the things you and I have agreed on over time is buyers and sellers actually are the final arbitrator of value. We have to have an appraisal when we're doing loans because the folks that buy the loans want to make sure that there's actually real value there on the property that they're lending against. But it's difficult today simply because the data doesn't exist. Historical data in the last month or two to justify. There's not a lot of houses and there's not a lot of data to justify the escalation of values. So you really do, and I will tell you all that are listening today, we focus on trying to get as much of our business as possible to D.S. Murphy's firm. We can't mandate all of it, but and we do that because we really want to make sure we have the very best people doing work to support getting the best values and also the best service back to us. Okay, our specific recommendations to create the best outcomes for your buyers and sellers. You're a realtor here today. First, for your buyers, use speed in your contract to help your offer become more attractive. Start with Supreme. Encourage your buyers to get all the financial documents while they're shopping before they get under contract to us so that we can go as fast as possible. We'll have what we need, and we don't need to wait until the application is filed to actually do that. Right after we do the pre-approval, get them, encourage them to send us everything, and then make the application immediately as the financial contingency clock is running as soon as the contract's signed. We oftentimes find buyers wait 2 and 3 days to come to us. We've lost 2 and 3 days of that process. Now, we try to get the appraisal ordered, but if we don't have the contract, we cannot order it until we actually have the contract address, all that kind of information. So encourage your buyers to understand there's a traffic jam. Buying agents, create 3 contingencies in your contract on your conventional contracts. One for finance, net of the appraisal, one for the inspection, and then an appraisal contingency, and give, to Scott's point, give 2 weeks. If you use 10 days, you can do that on the finance side. We're comfortable with that, okay? But if you add the appraisal and there is a delay, then you got to go back to the seller and renegotiate the entire term. So if you just add a appraisal contingency and put it for 14 days versus the financial contingency, and again, we're welcoming you to continue to use that in 10 days. Listing agents, take the call. Make the appraiser's schedule a priority. Usually it's both of our schedules. Right now, they are the priority because we just simply don't have enough of them against the amount of demand in the business. And finally, be prepared with the best comparables you can possibly offer so that your seller and your buyer don't get disappointed with the short appraisals. Finally, 58 days to close versus 23. Start with Supreme. Hey, Scott, thank you so much for all, and your folks, please let them know how much we appreciate all that they've done in the last year because the demand has been crazy. I know that, and you guys have done just yeoman's job working weekends and nights to help us help our customers get the closings in 23 days or less. So we appreciate you, Scott. Thanks for being on today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Pat.
All right. See you again soon.
All right.
This has been News You Can Use.